you are Australia's greatest ever golfer in a lot of people's eyes, and male or female, just in general. Your career's been phenomenal. 7 majors, over 50 wins. When you go through Wikipedia, it's hard to tell what the exact number is. Is it like 50 to somewhere between 50 and 70?
Yeah, I know. There's a couple of double ups with the Australian Open was an LPGA event one of the times that I won it. So yeah, they double up. It's good when it gets up to 70 when it's really like 53.
But that's just phenomenal. I'm guessing for most professional golfers, like 1 is good or 5 is good. We're talking like a variance between 50 and 70. It's ridiculous on so many levels, but it's just a testament to how amazing your career was. And as we dig into this, I just wanted to, as with most interviews, let's start with the early days and how you got into the game and what made you fall in love with the game of golf.
Well, I grew up in a sugar cane farming town, Ayr in North Queensland. Right around when I was born, my parents and my grandparents, my mum's parents, took up the game. And so they were just really avid golfers in my younger years. And just growing up in the country in a country club, it was a fairly young membership, which, really isn't the case in most clubs. But at the time, it was a relatively young membership with a lot of couples around my parents' age or slightly older, but everyone had kids. And so it was just a great atmosphere. Mum and Dad would play on a Saturday afternoon, and my grandparents would look after us and drop us out to the club at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and Mum and Dad would be upstairs having a drink with the people that they played with, and we'd just be downstairs, running riot, all the kids. So I think it was just a great atmosphere, and I just wanted to be at the club more, and I wanted to. Mum and Dad enjoyed it, my grandparents enjoyed it, so I felt like it was something that I was going to enjoy.
Well, that's so amazing. Like, it's probably not what most people's perceptions are of the traditional golf club. Like, we've spoken about it so much with future golfers. How amazing would it be, like, seeing a golf club where it is families out there? It's not just 4 guys or 4 ladies. Like, it's a family of parents and kids going around. And it sounds like that's the environment that you grew up in. And was it that kind of connection that got you really connected to the sport and just being able to run amok?
Yeah, I think so. I think, I never felt that, the unease or not being made feel welcome at the club I grew up with, just because, again, a country club needs all the members they can get. And we had a really good junior program, so there was tons of kids my age and a little bit older playing. And when I started when I was 8, so I think that, that welcoming and not the stereotypical, snooty golf club culture didn't exist. So it wasn't until I started playing golf more competitively in my teen years and heading down to the capital cities where I actually realized that was the culture at a lot of those golf clubs. But yeah, I mean, if you look at how I got into golf and why I started to love it, was because it was, a family sport and everyone was welcome.
And what parts of the game did you really love at the beginning? Like, was it driving the ball, putting, chipping? Was there a particular bit where you're like, I'm really looking forward to this today?
I was a sports mad kid, so I played everything. But I think what I loved about golf was just the individuality of it. I could put in all the work and it was going to benefit me. And it wasn't, if I was playing softball or cricket or a team sport, it wasn't, someone else didn't do their practice, or, they don't catch the ball as well as I did and they dropped one and we lost the game. It was all on me. And I think that's why I gravitated towards golf in the end, was because I liked that I had control of what was going on.
That's great. And were you a natural from day one, or how did the journey start?
I think I was pretty natural. I'm was pretty good. I don't know if I am as much now. I think as you become an adult, you're less childlike. But I was very good at mimicking what I saw on TV, and so like even I played a bit of cricket growing up, and I was a pretty decent bowler. And I remember being asked who taught me to bowl, and I was like, oh, I just watched it on TV. So
like Dennis Lilly,
you know, yeah. I think with golf, my natural swing was just me mimicking what I'd seen on TV, and then obviously from there, having a good base was a lot easier to coach. An 8-year-old kid who was keen to learn.
And that's great. And like, was there an early model for your golf swing that you were mimicking?
No, I don't think. I mean, obviously, I looked up to Greg Norman, but I don't know if I ever really modeled my swing of anyone's. I think, when I first started when I was 8, we never had a club professional at our course. So my parents' good friend, Calvin Heller, who was the head green superintendent at the club and also one of the best players in the club, they asked him if he'd give me lessons and just keep an eye on me. So I think he just really he learned all of his golf knowledge through reading golf magazines. So I think he just really developed my natural swing, and then anything that he had learnt from reading golf magazines, he sort of made fit my swing. So it was very, very, great coaching, obviously, but it was just basic knowledge that he'd learned himself.
That's amazing. And tell us a little bit about Calvin and your relationship, because he was your coach pretty much all throughout your career, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, he's still a part of my coaching team now. But Calvin, he started coaching me when I was 8, and then as I got a little bit older and I started playing up with the adults in club competition, and then club opens and stuff like that, we would partner up and play in the mixed foursomes. So we won quite a few club championships and district championships in mixed foursomes together. And then when I was 16, Calvin had an accident and became a quadriplegic. So he obviously coached me for 8 years, and we had a very, very close bond. And once he'd come home from hospital and had adjusted to his new way of life, he took straight back up to coaching me again, and actually was my only coach through the best part of my career, reaching world number 1 and winning 6 of the 7 majors. He was my only coach. An
amazing story. And how did that dynamic shift, like after the incident, and then going through the coaching? What was that like?
Well, I think again, because we had such a close bond, and because he'd been my only coach, we were just able to communicate with words, and I knew the game enough that if he said, do this, I'd go, do you mean this or this? And so there were I think what he had and what I've loved is that I could still challenge him. He wanted me to challenge him, and then if that ended up in a drag down punch up, that's what it did. People would always couldn't believe that we'd be arguing the way we were, and that I was talking to him the way I was, but that was them looking at him as someone in a wheelchair rather than me. I was looking at him as my coach, and if he was able-bodied, no one would care that we were screaming at one another about trying to work out what was wrong with my swing. So we just had a very good bond that way, and through the early part of my professional career, we'd only see each other in person maybe 2 weeks a year. I'd be home in air, and we'd practice 2 or 3 weeks maybe it would be, but it'd only be sort of Christmas time and and around the Australian tournaments. So it was really only the beginning of the year, and then I'd go, 8 months without seeing him. And it was early stages of the internet, and I'd be, videoing my golf swing on a, proper full camera with tripod and everything. And then I'd have to get back to my hotel room, download it onto my computer, and, then do the dial-up internet and, email it to him. And then with the time difference, and by the time he corresponded, it was a day, 2 days in between, just on one lesson. So it's a lot easier now when you can actually do like a FaceTime live lesson, someone on the other side of the world watching you live on the driving range and commenting. But we made it work. So
that's hilarious. I love that. It's like you've got a problem on Thursday, you'll figure out the solution on Saturday, Sunday sometime. It's brilliant. And what was is there like a big takeaway lesson that you learned from Calvin as a coach, and like
mainly out? more as a person, I think, was no matter what life throws at you, life's worth living. And it'll be 20 years this year that he's been in a wheelchair, and I think about what he would have missed out on if things had gone the wrong way and he didn't make it. So you could say that he could have had a better life if things didn't go the way they did, but he still had an incredible life. He's seen his kids grow up, and he's got 5 grandkids, and he's still he's coaching my niece now, and hopefully my nephew. He's just taken up the game too. So he's lived a very, very full life and has been such an inspiration to me.
No, it's such an amazing story, and you see, I've heard so many stories of pros that they start off with their childhood coaches, and then they start saying, all right, well, I've got potential now. I'm going to get into the top ranks, and they'll change the coach or they'll change the team, and then it kind of gets derailed a little bit. I know you mentor a lot of young players. What's your advice with coaching and how to go about your coaches?
Yeah, I think it's all a personal preference. When so the way it went with Calvin and I is that we made a major swing change at the beginning of 2003, and it just became very hard for me to do on my own. And Ian Triggs, who I'd known since I was 14, because he was a part of the Queensland development coaching when I was growing up, he was out on tour a few times a year because he was coaching Rachel Hetherington at the time, and he came up, he saw me grinding away at the US Open on a Friday afternoon when I was either going to make the cut on the number or just miss, and he said he could tell what I'd been working on, and he knew I needed to tidy up a few things to get it where I wanted it, and he knew my relationship with Calvin, and I think had that not happened to Calvin, maybe would Calvin still be my coach? Who knows? But I knew that how important Calvin was to me, and I also knew how important I was to Calvin. And so I was never going to make a coaching change unless the offer that Ian Triggs gave me was, I know that Calvin's going to be a part of this. I'd like to help the both of you because I can travel and I can see you during the year. I'd like to be a part of the team. So that's how that started, and Triggsy worked with us for about 10 years. It was about 10 years, and very successfully. But anyone that I have worked with, that's sort of been the condition. That I can still sit here and talk to you. That Calvin Hall has coached me my entire career, which he has.
That's
He's
amazing.
been involved from start to now.
No, it's a phenomenal story, and let's go back kind of to that transition of you're a junior now, you're starting to shoot some lower scores. Tell us a little bit about turning pro and that kind of junior career.
Yeah, so I just sort of had a gradual increase, making my way through the steps, different age champions and and then getting into state junior squads and development squads like that, and then eventually making teams, and then through these Australians, and winning different events along the way. And by the time I got to 1994, I finished high school in 92, and I was just working part-time and playing as much golf as I could. And those two years out of high school, my progress, without having to worry about school, just really increased the standard of my play, probably quicker than I thought. And by the middle of 94, I decided that I was selected to play in the World Amateur for Australia, and that if I'd played well there, I was going to turn pro, which I did. And so at the end of 94, I turned pro with $200 in my bank account, and asking, hat in hand, asking my grandparents and my parents for a loan. So I didn't even have, I think it was $350 to join the ALPG tour, and I didn't even have that in the bank to join it. So so I definitely started with not much in the bank.
That's hilarious. If that $150 didn't happen, the whole Karrie Webb story.
Yeah, right.
At that point, that's phenomenal. I love that. Like, that's such a starting from the bottom to the top kind of story there. And like, when you're making that move, what's your level of confidence that, all right, I've got something special here? Did you know, were the expectations high or low? What was that like?
They were pretty reasonable. I'd played well in some of the professional events in Australia. I finished high up. I don't know if I finished second as an amateur. I played in the last group with Laura Davies as an amateur, and so at the Australian Masters, and so I knew that I could handle that stage. And I don't think you know for sure what's going to happen once it actually means something. And that part is to pay the hotel bill. It's different when you're an amateur and you play a professional event because you've got nothing to lose. But yeah, no, I had a certain amount of confidence, and my first two events were at the end of 94. It was the Australian Open first at Royal Adelaide, and then the Australian Masters at Royal Pines. And I made the cut at the Australian Open. Didn't do great, but I was happy that my first event as a pro, I made the cut. And then the next week at the Australian Masters, I played well again and finished second to Laura Davies, and made $25,000 and thought I was a millionaire. I thought I kept going to the ATM to check to see that my bank account still said 25,000 in it. And literally 6 weeks before that, I had $200 in there. So, it was, from there, I think I naively thought that $25,000 would get me through a whole year playing the European tour, which I'm glad I was naive enough to think that. So I've never actually been struggling to a professional where I had to worry about that playing well that week to keep my card or to pay the hotel bill. I just had steady results early in my European tour career. I played over there for a year in 95, and August of that year I won the British Open. So from there, I never looked back.
That's amazing. And because at that time, the British Open wasn't classified as a major, right? So you've essentially gone out and won a major in one of your first few tournaments. That's
yeah.
So
yeah, I couldn't believe it either. So.
And so what's that like? Like, what was happening in that tournament? Because I'm guessing it still was a massive tournament in the schedule at that time.
Yep. Yeah. It was, it was an LPGA co-sanctioned event with the Women's European Tour, and I'd played well for my rookie year. I'd had quite a few top tens and went in there with decent form. But I don't, I guess I was thinking that I could win, but I don't actually ever remember like, oh, I can win every, I should be able to win. Like I've had a top 10, so I should be able to win. I don't think it ever occurred to me that it was going to happen that quickly. I think, you hear you've, got to pay your dues before that happens. And I just played really well all week and got to the 72nd hole on the 18th tee that day with the 5-shot lead and, backed off. My sight line off the tee was one of the British Open sponsor boards, and I had to back off, I think, twice because I was like, I'm going to win the British Open. Like I just, 20 years old, I couldn't believe it.
That's amazing. And what's going through your mind? Like, people talk about the mindset of a champion and a winner. Like what do you think separated you even at that young age to allow you to finish the job and to win the tournaments?
I don't know. I think anyone that becomes successful at whatever they do, they have something in them that they don't even understand. Obviously there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, but there's a lot of people that put a lot of hard work into their craft and don't reach the pinnacle that I have. I think sometimes it's just your God-given talent, and that you do all the right things, you do the hard work, and then you do put yourself there with a chance, and you're completely comfortable in that environment, in that situation. And I, to me, that was not something I ever had to learn. I reveled in those situations.
Yeah, wow, it's amazing. And do you think I'm always fascinated by the mental game versus, say, the natural talent, the physical attributes that you've got. What's your thoughts on that? Like, would you say, like, I remember we spoke to Nick O'Hearn in one of our first episodes, and Nick's story is the opposite. It's like, he's a 4-handicapper, grinding, going through that. And he's like, I was all mental, I was talented, but talent, no one would ever say that I was a naturally gifted golfer, but he kind of figured it out through mental strength. Where with yours, like when you're sitting there at the driving range in the morning prior to a tournament, did you just kind of feel that, I've got you covered both physically and mentally, or were your expectations high going into the tournaments?
My expectations were always high, but I would say that just like any human being, you have self-doubt, and I put a lot of pressure on myself. So I held myself even on a Monday at the same levels as I did playing on a Sunday, and it took me a long time to realize that I was a pretty poor practicer, and not to take too much, even though I practiced a lot. I put too high expectations on the quality of my practice and wanting it to emulate, Sunday back nine quality. And so because it didn't, it actually led to a lot of doubt going into a tournament as to where my game was. It took me many years to realize that I only needed to show myself just little snippets and really focus. I just couldn't get up for practice. And when I walked onto that first tee on Thursday, I was ready to go. And just something in me changed. And it was I am still very mentally tough to go along with the talent that I worked hard on. But it was all natural. Mentally, it was just natural. And so later in my career, when things got a little bit more difficult for me, because I never had a base that my mental game was based around, I sort of had to learn that all over again. I had to learn why I was good, what I did mentally well. I didn't really have an understanding of that. It just came naturally.
Yeah, and it's like that paradox of like overthinking it nearly, right? Because then you start thinking, how do I find that special sauce or whatever it is when it's coming from that natural place? I think a lot of golfers feel that, even if you're an amateur. It's like, how was it so easy the other day? And then now it's become that difficult today.
Yeah.
It's good to know
cool.
that even the best in the world and the greatest of all time have that same doubt on the golf course. And I think it's one of the special things of the game that does that to us.
I think that's why you love golf and hate it all at once.
Oh, that's brilliant. And then, so around that time, 96 to 98, then you start hitting your stride, like 99 to 2002, pretty much a very golden run. Same time as another golfer on the men's side is also having a pretty decent run as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Like what it was like? Maybe we'll start with, call it that sort of peaking in the Tiger era and watching, the men's game versus the women's game. What was that like?
Yeah, well, it was a great time in golf. Tiger and I were rookies the same year, so for many years we were compared because I had a great rookie year, he did too, and then our careers paralleled in many ways. When he was winning, tons of majors through the late 90s, early 2000s, that's when I was dominating in the majors also. And I think the only difference was that Tiger really never had any peers. Like he didn't have anyone that sort of kept up with him. Whereas, I had Annika Sorenstam, Sari Pak, Julie Inkster through those years that were winning majors as well and winning a lot of tournaments as well. So that was the only difference, is that I didn't separate. At times I separated myself like Tiger did, but I didn't separate myself like Tiger did over that long period of time, just because I had other players that, were as good as me and doing well at the same time.
Yeah, it's pretty. And with that, like around that similar time, did you get to meet him? Did you ever play with him? Were there the paths cross at all?
Yeah, I played with him a few times in like TV exhibition matches. Yeah. Probably the most well-known one was in 2001. Yeah, the Battle at Bighorn. It was. Yeah. So it was made for primetime evening TV here on the East Coast in the States. We played out in Palm Springs, which was 3 hours behind, and I was partnered with David Duval, and Annika was partnered with Tiger. Yeah. And all four of us, Tiger and David were 1 and 2 in the world, and Annika and I were 1 and 2 in the world. And we were playing foursomes, and the plan was that we play, and the last 4 holes are under lights. So we started at 4 in the afternoon, I think, out in the desert, maybe 5 in the afternoon, and so which was 8 o'clock prime time in the States, on the East Coast. And we played, but it took us, they set the course up so hard, and none of us had played foursomes together. So it was like we were sort of learning on the fly, and on the tees that we weren't teeing off at the beginning, we were required to walk back to the men's tees where they were teeing off. But it took us so long to play the first 9 holes that you only have 45 minutes to get to the lights before it gets dark. So just run. Like, don't, girls, you don't have to walk back to the guys' tees. Let's just keep going. Because so by the time we got to 15, it was dark. On 14, we could hardly see. And then 15, we had lights. So it was definitely quite an experience. We had, a huge crowd out there. And, Tiger had a deal with Disney to do these events, and he'd done a few in the years before that, and this was the only one that ever featured women in it. So it was probably an experience I would have enjoyed more now than I did back then, only purely because we played it on the Monday of our British Open. So we finished that night, and they flew us privately over to the UK for the British Open, getting in Tuesday mid-morning. So not the prep you would normally want for going into a major, but it was definitely a great opportunity for us to play in that.
That's amazing. And did you get to spend some time together throughout your career as well? Like, did you ever share advice or tips given a little bit of that?
A little bit, not really, but I've always enjoyed the time I've been around Tiger.
Mm.
And I've admired his career. I mean, the times I've played with him, he certainly did hit the ball completely different to anyone of his generation starting out. All the young guys now have aspired to be like him and are doing things that he was doing 20 years ago. But for me, it was always just I was just as big a fan watching how he played and the things that he's done. I wasn't old enough to really appreciate what Jack Nicklaus did. So to see what Tiger's done in golf and how long he did it for, and then the comeback has been pretty cool to watch.
Yeah, and what's your kind of views like? Because I remember in one of your interviews hearing you speak, and like women's golf wasn't even televised until, was it 1990? Was that when it
Yeah,
first?
that was the first women's golf tournament I ever saw on TV.
Yeah.
In Australia, was the Australian Ladies Masters the first year they had it at Palm Meadows on the Gold Coast. I'd never seen women's golf on TV before that. So it's definitely come a long way. I even wrote to one of the Australian golf magazines when I was about 13, asking for more women's content. Just even some results of who was winning tournaments in the US on the LPGA. These days, if you don't see it on TV or see it in a magazine, you can go on the internet and find all the content you want. But I was just mad for every bit of information I could get on golf in general. But being a girl, I wanted to see what other women were doing, and so by the time I saw it on TV, that was already in my dreams to play professional golf and play on the LPGA.
Yeah, that's amazing. And compared to, say, call it like the mid 90s and the early 90s to now, where do you see it heading? Where do you think it's at right now? What does it need to change and improve?
Yeah, I think late 90s, early 2000s, or I think golf in general was bigger in Australia than it is now. It took up more coverage in newspapers. Even now, unless Adam Scott wins the Masters, I don't think it makes the back page. And I feel like women's golf was, we were getting good coverage again, late 90s, early 2000s. And in recent years, I feel like because for whatever reason, all the golf organizations together haven't, gotten these stories out there and kept us in mainstream sporting culture and newspapers and sports news. I really think now with the women's sports movement in Australia that we're kind of playing a little bit of catch up because there's a lot of other women's sport more prominent on TV now in Australia, at least free to air TV. You can watch the LPGA, every week on Fox, but free to air TV, it's only a couple of weekends a year. So we're really, really playing catch up now to, women's cricket and women's AFL and all those sports.
Yeah, I think you hit a really good point there around the storytelling, especially because that's something that I think we all feel as well. And the personalities and the individual stories of our golfers probably don't come out as much. Like recently, we've seen a little bit more of it, like with Adam Scott going down to Melanie and playing around there and doing all these bits and pieces. But I think you're right there. Like even with, like Hannah Green wins a major, like, they get some coverage, but it probably doesn't get the coverage that it deserves. And I think that's the real interesting piece around how to get those stories out there a little bit more and the personalities of the golfers, because it's such a unique individual sport where everyone's different. But how do we unpack and showcase their individuality, I guess?
Yeah, and I think for the most part, we're overseas. we're doing those things overseas. And I think it's still trying to connect us back to Australian news during the NRL season and the AFL season, and the cricket summer, and it's trying to get us to at least be elevated in where we rank as newsworthy sports stories.
Yeah, that's a really good point. No, I think so. Let's go now to the first major. So you're kicking into gear. Tell us a little bit about the first major win, what it's like, any memorable moments, what stands out when you look back on it now.
Well, my first major win came at the Du Maurier Classic, which is now the Canadian Open, but once Du Maurier is a cigarette company in Canada, and once they weren't, they faced the same thing as we did in Australia with cigarette advertising. So once that went away, that's when the British Open became a major on the LPGA. But so Du Maurier was still a major in '99. And I'd only been on the LPGA since '96, and I'd say for at least 18 months I was already answering questions as to why I hadn't won a major yet. So I put tons and tons of pressure on myself to try and win a major, just to stop answering those questions, mainly. And '99 actually was one of my best years on tour, and I got to the Du Maurier Classic, which was our last major of the year, and I hadn't won a major. And again, putting lots of pressure on myself. Played the first 2 rounds and made the cut. I think it was either on the number or just one better than the number, but nowhere near being involved in winning the event. And then went out on the weekend and shot 12 under, 266s, and pipped Laura Davies right at the end. There was a group in front of her on Sunday, and had a great back 9 to pip her by one shot on the last.
That's
so yeah, it was just it was a relief more than anything. And I truly believe that was the way I was going to win a major, because I was just putting way too much pressure on myself. So it was, it was going to have to be a come from behind where I'd sort of gone, I don't care anymore. And you just go out and fire away. And that's how I won it. And, that really started a period of some unbelievable golf, especially in the majors over the next 3 years.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And you hear that story so often, that there's like this one moment or the turning point that really kicks off their career in so many athletes, journeys. In that major, was there a moment that stands out where it was like, all right, I'm done here, it's not going to happen this time, versus, all right, wait, we've got a sniff, we keep going? Or did it just kind of gradually happen?
Yeah, I think it just gradually happened. I had a really good round on Saturday, and it moved me a long way up. But I think I can't even remember. I think I still started the day 5 shots behind or something like that. So it's still a long way off. So it wasn't really till the back 9, and I made some early birdies on the back 9 that I was like, oh, I've got a chance here to post a score and see what LD can do. Because she was the one that sort of was in control of the event.
Nice. And then you have that 3-year run where you're winning everything. What's that like?
It should have been more enjoyable than I made it. And I read a lot of sporting autobiographies, and anyone that's made it to the top of their sport literally says the same thing. You're so focused and driven on being the best that when you tick off goals and achievements, you're just like, okay, well, I've done that. Now I've got to do this, and I've got to do this. And, I guess my example to highlight where I was through this period, it wasn't until about 6 or 7 years ago that I found out that I held this record on the LPGA for most consecutive top 10s. And it was because another player had 11, I think, when they first started talking about it. And they said, she's had 11 top 10s in a row. She's chasing Karrie Webb's record of 16. And I was like, 16? I had 16 top 10s in a row?
I didn't even know.
And I was like, what period of time was that? So then I looked, and it was 99, 2000. And I was like, yeah. And someone said, how could you not know you held that record? And I was like, well, probably because during that time, maybe I won 4 tournaments. I don't even know how many tournaments I won in those 16 top 10s, but I can visibly remember me saying on a tournament where come the back 9 on Sunday, I didn't have a chance to win, but I was going to finish in the top 10. And I'm like, just another top 10. So just like no perspective on what I was doing. And all my sole focus was winning. And if I didn't win, then I didn't care. I did care. Like, I still played hard to finish, but it just, if it wasn't winning, it wasn't good enough. And so with that sort of mentality, unless you win, you're not really enjoying yourself. And I wouldn't change that mindset, because I think that's what made me good. But I also wish I had a 45-year-old head on a 25-year-old body to at least go, come on, this is bloody good. You're never going to do this again. You're never going to come close to 16 top 10s in a row. So, it was an amazing period of time in my career.
That's phenomenal. And just unpacking that a little bit more, like that's consistency at the most elite level. If you look back on it now, what do you think it was? What was clicking at that time? Or were you just in the zone, or was there something happening? Was there a mixture of things?
Yeah, I think just in the zone and very, very, very confident. Just I think that's how golf is. You just ride these waves of confidence, and it just seems like when you're riding the wave high, you get the good bounces. You make the 10-footer for par to keep the momentum going. When you're struggling and you just need that one putt, you could look back at a number of patches in your career, and if you'd made that 10-footer at that time, it just would have started to snowball, and that's generally what happens when you get out of a period where you're not playing as well. So you've just got to just go with the ups and the downs. And I just had a very long up period where I just kept riding it as long as I could. I knew that at some point it wasn't going to be that good, and I did understand that, but I rode it as long as I could.
It's so amazing. And hey, getting to taste it for that time is still something that very, very few people get to do. And it's amazing just to hear you unpack and kind of reflect on that as that moment. And I think listening to Tiger speak in one of his interviews was the same thing. It's like, I don't play unless I'm going to win, right? Like it's that mindset. And I think that's probably what separates the greats from the other greats, if that makes sense. It is that mindset. And that's I love that. You didn't even know that you had that record, and it's not like you just have the record. It's leading it by 5. That's phenomenal. And so you go through that period of time, flying, kicking along. Then kind of tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced and what you learned from those.
Yeah, well, I think, I started my career off, like we talked 95, I won the British Open, then 96, I, led the money list on the LPGA and won Rookie of the Year. And, then it just was this, progression of up to where, I was number 1 in the world. And I think, at some point, that that's not always going to be the case. I think for me, it was because I just had this continually good progression. I never had the ups and the downs to get to number 1. That, it was learning to deal with. And I guess the biggest lesson I learned is how fine a line it is from being the best in the world to being 20th in the world to being 50th in the world. It's a very, very fine line, and you know, when I was on the good side of the fine line, you know, you thought there was miles between that and playing poorly, but it's really, you know, it's really a shot here or there over the course of a tournament. Like I said, making the putt at the right time changes your whole mindset or the whole momentum of your tournament. So when I was on the side of the fine line that wasn't going well, you know, then you just start searching for what, you know, what needs to be fixed. And like I mentioned earlier, for me, it was going back and relearning the mental part of the game that I was so naturally gifted at, and learning the processes to be able to handle the pressures of playing and you know, negative thoughts that creep in. And you know, I think I always had those negative thoughts when I played well, but they came in and then they went out, or when they came in, they motivated me to prove myself wrong, you know. So you know, I had to learn then, when the negative thoughts came in, they stayed in my head, how to get rid of them. So it was just all, you know, for me, that was the biggest learning curve for me, was just retraining myself mentally.
Yeah, well, it's a bit like the hero's journey, isn't it? You sort of start off, then you have to go through the adversity and the challenges. You spoke about rebuilding that mental side. Like, what did you learn through that process specifically that you had to change mentally?
Just a lot of the self-talk, and how I spoke to myself. You know, I could tell myself that was a crap shot, but not tell myself that I was crap. There's a very big difference in saying that was a really crappy shot versus you're crap, and how your brain sees that, especially if you start listening to that self-talk. So, yeah, it was, you know, realizing how hard I was being on myself, and just to ease off on the pedal a little bit and cut myself some slack.
Yeah, I think golf's a funny game like that. Like, I've played with people who are the calmest people in normal life and never say anything that's negative. But then when they're on the golf course, some of the self-talk that goes down, it's like, wow, where's that coming from? Like, how's this game do this to us?
Yeah, right. And we just keep coming back for more.
Suckers for punishment. But yeah, I think it's a unique thing about golf that not many people realize, that how much goes on between the ears out there, whether you're an amateur or a professional. That's the common thread that binds us all.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, and actually, you know, when I watch golf, I get more stressed out watching golf on TV than I do playing it, because I can feel those emotions, like when a guy has lipped out 3 putts in a row, or you know, a girl, you know, just gets that wrong bounce, and you know, and you just think, you know, the build up of that over the years, like you just like, it wears on you a little bit.
Like, yeah, one that stands out is like Jordan Spieth at the Masters, just hitting it in the water over and over again. Like that feeling. It doesn't matter if you're a golfer, you just feel that pain of. Did you have any moments like that stand out in your career where you're like, oh, just want to hide right now, or?
I'm sure there's plenty, but I guess for me, I don't remember them specifically, which is good. It means that I've gotten rid of them. But in saying that, I still sweat over a 3-footer now, and that's because of all the 3-footers I've missed. So it's not that you remember a specific one; you just remember you've missed a few, and so then you start getting worked up about it. But yeah, no, I guess I've done pretty well with that, because I don't really have a. I mean, there's been shots that I've hit at the time, I'm like, well, that was embarrassing, but I can't really recall them now as specific shots. So that's a good thing.
Lucky you. I wish I had that ability to just forget them like that. That's amazing. And then on the flip side, are there any moments that just really stick out in the career of, wow, that was an amazing shot, or an amazing putt, or, you know, a few of the highlights?
Well, the best shot it's probably not the best shot I've ever hit, but the biggest shot I've ever hit was at the 2006 Craft Nabisco, which is our first major of the year. And it was originally called the Dynasty, had a few different names, but back in 2006, it was the Craft Nabisco. But I was about 3 groups ahead of the last group on Sunday and was having a great Sunday. Got to 18, tied for the lead, and knew I needed a birdie on the last. And they'd moved the tees up that day to where, for the first time, and well, I'd been on tour 10 years, for the first time in 10 years, they'd made the last reachable. It's an island green, completely surrounded by water. And I missed the fairway, so I had to lay up. So from 116 yards in, I knew I had to get it as close as I possibly could, because at this stage, this is when the 3-footers were giving me fits. So I wanted as easy a putt as possible, and just hit the purest pitching wedge, bounced a couple of times and went in the hole. And at the time, I actually thought I'd hold that to win, just because the leaders they'd gone backwards during the day. And I thought I'd hold that to win. But as it turned out, Lorena Ochoa eagled the last in the last group to tie me, and we're in a playoff. And the shot I hit a couple of shots in that playoff that were probably better than that wedge, but that wedge I can recall the emotions. Like, I think if they had, the muscle 3D monitors on me right now, like, they'd be able to replay how I was feeling at the time.
Oh, it's amazing. That's arguably one of the more iconic moments in Australian golf. So it's fair enough that that's the one that stands out.
Yeah.
And then in that tournament, that went to a playoff, right? So you thought that you'd won at that point, holding out as you should. Yeah. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, well, I had quite a few friends at that event too. So by the time I got out of the score tent, I knew that I was only 1 shot ahead. So I was like, well, there's a very good chance that I will be in a playoff now. And so I had to try and get myself down. And when I walked out of the score tent, all my friends were there, and of course, giddy with excitement. And I just was like, I have to get out of here. I want to live in this moment. You just want to keep celebrating that moment. But I knew that if I did that, I wouldn't have come back to earth in time if there was a playoff. So my caddy Mikey and I just headed to the driving range, and we were just the only 2 over there. And I still couldn't hit a ball for about 10 minutes over there. I was still shaking, but just to get away from it and get my pulse rate back down.
Oh, it's such an amazing story. So you go regroup, hits the balls, and then what are you feeling like when you head back out to finish off the tournament?
Well, Lorena eagled the last 2, so I feel like she was probably as pumped up as I still was, but I just felt like, I guess you don't hit a shot like that and then lose. So but Lorena, how she eagled it was she hit the green in 2 to about 10 feet and hold it. So I knew she could reach the green. So and easily reach the green. She hit a hybrid in. And so in the playoff, I hit the fairway, and she was 20 or 30 yards in front of me. So she was going again with probably a hybrid. And I had to make the decision. I couldn't, so the green shapes left to right, and the right cover is a little bit further than the left cover. And I couldn't, I would have, because the 3-wood I hit would have covered the right cover, but it was only because of adrenaline. I couldn't, on just a normal Thursday, I would have probably laid up because I wouldn't have guaranteed I could make the right cover. But I knew that to be comfortable, I had to go for the left cover and just hope that it fed round to the back. And I was also worried about it going over the green. I'd never gone for this green in my whole career. And I actually didn't think that I was probably going to do it when I played the practice round from there. because I knew I'd be coming in with a 3-wood, and I'm like, why would I go for an island green with a 3-wood? So in the playoff, I was like, I have to hit 3-wood because Lorena's going to go for it. And I said to Mikey, what's behind the green? Is there any rough before the water, or is it closely mown? And he goes, no, there's rough. He said, I threw balls down there when I walked the course, and the ball will hold up if it goes over. So I was like, all right. And that's where I hit it. It raced over that green. I was like, I hope you're right. And I was good. I was a couple of yards into the thick rough, but and that chip shot was by far a better shot that I hit in that playoff than the wedge shot I hit and made. It was a way more difficult shot that I hit to about 10 feet and eventually holed to win the playoff.
Wow, I've got like sweaty palms talking through it. It's an amazing story. And from the majors, you won 7. Obviously, is there a single one that stands out more than the others?
Well, that one probably does. It's my last major, and the way in which I won it, and I enjoyed that one the most. So that one sticks out the best.
What's the celebration like after winning a major? What happens?
Well, that one was like a clip from The Hangover. It was, like I said, I had plenty of friends in town, and then Mikey was staying in a house with about 8 caddies. So we all met at their house, and it was just the next morning. We didn't stay, but they said it looked like there was just like clothes in the pool and empty bottles of this. It was just an episode or a clip from The Hangover. And
awesome.
And my hangover was definitely from The Hangover.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So it was celebrated properly. Absolutely.
Yes, it was. It certainly was.
Very good, very good. It's been amazing just sort of going through the career and, the ups, the downs and all of that. Now, like just sort of shifting gears a little bit. I know where you're at now at this point in your career, you're still obviously playing. I know you play a limited schedule of tournaments, but the big thing I know that you've been doing is mentoring a lot of the younger golfers. And there's this great YouTube clip that we'll link to the episode called Be Like Karrie, where pretty much every single young Australian golf superstar is saying what they love about you. It's quite an amazing video. Tell us a little bit about that and your relationship with the next generation coming through.
Yeah, well, I partnered back in 2007. I partnered with Golf Australia, and we came up with the Karrie Webb series. And it's a scholarship program where the leading to women, Australian women, through a series of events that they play, win a monetary scholarship that helps them with any of their golf travel expenses with coaching or anything like that. But for me, the thing I get out of it the most, and I think is the coolest part, is the girls come over to a tournament in the States, which has been the US Open from 2008 until the last couple of years, and then the date of the US Open changed. So it's been at the KPMG Women's PGA Championship the last 2 years. So for me, that's the coolest experience. The first year, so it started in 07, 08. That was their summer season. And so it was at the 08 US Open that the girls came for the first time. And when I decided that it was going to be the US Open, people in my team were like, "Are you sure you want it to be the US Open?" Like that, and I said, "No, I'm not sure. I don't know how it's going to go for me, but this is the biggest event that we play, and I want the girls to aspire to play in this event. I don't want to just go to some random regular event that doesn't have the atmosphere of a US Open. I want them to aspire to play at the top of our sport." And it was the best decision I ever made because it's been the best experience. And then to top it off, last year's Women's PGA, so I rent a house, and the girls stay in the house with me, and
that's awesome.
And they see what I do when I get up, breakfast, come with me to the golf course and see what goes into a week at a professional major. And last year, and some years we have extra bedrooms. So last year we had a couple extra bedrooms. So Hannah Green and Sue O stayed with us. So they're 2 past Karrie Webb series winners, and I had the 2 girls, Becky Kay and Grace Kim, over. And then Stacey Keating, she was one of the first scholarship winners that was over in 2008. She now works in high performance for Golf Australia, so she was there as well, staying. So we're all in the house together, and Hannah goes on and wins. So that was the ultimate. I think we're going to have a hard time living up to that one, but yeah. So going back to my last major win, I that was my most recent mentoring, was teaching the girls how to celebrate properly.
And that's ridiculous. So you're taking full credit for that win then. Obviously, it's setting up that environment, it's putting the house, it's like Hannah had to execute on the day, but it's the mentoring for sure.
No, I'm definitely not taking credit for that, but I just it's been such a joy for me, and throughout the biggest thing for me with them coming to those events and staying with me is that at the end of the week, we're friends, and they feel comfortable in reaching out and asking for help. And it wasn't, and when they come on tour, it's not like they don't know me and feel intimidated to be around me, because apparently I'm an intimidating person. So, yeah, so we're already friends, and I just get the biggest kick out of following them, and I guess now I know what my parents went through all these years watching live scoring and refresh when I can't see them on TV.
That's amazing, and I'm just picturing that experience as a learning experience. It must fast track the ones earlier on in their career so much more to be around that, like not only learning from your experiences, but then seeing that go down while they're there in the house and being able to ask questions and bounce ideas.
Yeah, I think it's great, because they're, the questions they're asking are about what they saw that day. So they're getting instant feedback and then relating it to their games as well. So yeah, it's been really good.
Oh, that's awesome. We'll share a link and some more info about that as well at the end of this.
Okay.
That's brilliant. And then I know that you're doing some really exciting stuff with Golf Australia as well. So you've got you're part of the Vision 2025. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, I think I guess my role in it is that I felt with the Karrie Webb series that I felt like the depth of the elite girls coming through. There wasn't a slew of them. We had a good couple every year, but there wasn't the depth. Just even watching scores, there just didn't seem to be the depth, and that goes down to grassroots. And so, I talked to Golf Australia about that, and to give them credit, I think they really took the challenge head on, and understood too that it's a sector in golf that is really has been underserved and under welcomed, I guess, and it's about changing the culture in clubs to welcome, not just young girls, but young boys too, making their first experience at a golf club better, and making like my experience at where I grew up, making me want to come back to the golf course, not, oh my God, if I go out there, they're going to tell me to tuck my shirt in and take my hat off in the clubhouse, and just all those rules and all that culture that we do love about golf, but is it really why we love golf, and do we really need to hold on to those things? And I think as far as mature age women starting golf, I think female members of just as bad. They sometimes can be unwelcoming to new female members to clubs, rather than rolling out the red carpet to someone under the age of 40 or 50 that wants to take up the game. that's where we need women to play golf. And the thing that I don't get is, husbands, if you get your wife to play, she won't be mad at you when you go and play golf on a Saturday because she'll be out there with you. So, I think we need to encourage women to take up the game, and then that gets kids in the game as well, and then it does become the family sport.
Yeah, I think it's. I'm just nodding and smiling because I couldn't agree with you more. And it's one of the big things behind what we're trying to do at Future Golf as well is how do you expose the game of golf to the non-traditional golfer? And we sort of started off more with predominantly younger men, but it was how do you win back that group that maybe played when they were teenagers and then started playing footy or cricket, got lost to the sport. How do you get them back into our great game at some point? And now we're looking even more beyond that over the last couple of years is how do we get younger women into the game? Like we did a Future Women initiative last year where we sponsored 250 memberships. Even from that, though, it was like that represented nearly a 5% increase in golfers in that age group nationally. And that blew our mind in terms of there's only 5,000 golfers aged between 20 and 39 nationally that are playing golf. It's crazy. And I think it's hard. It's going to be hard for us as a sport to remain sustainable and to grow if we can't attract people, at the grassroots when they're, juniors, teenagers, younger, starting families. Like I think that's a real key thing that we need to unlock as a sport. And do you think a lot of it's based around the barriers?
I agree with you. A little bit, I think. People are time poor, so they feel like they don't have the time to play golf. So I think it's up to golf and golf courses to come up with, other options. I think the world bodies, I know the RNA and the USGA are trying to come up with, you can play 9 holes and still put that card in for your handicap. You don't have to play 18 holes only to have a handicap. And I think that's the way of the future is, even to have, 9-hole competition, even if it's a Wednesday or a Saturday women's competition, that's just 9 holes. Maybe that's especially for women that have kids at home. 9 holes might be the only amount of time that they can get someone to look after their kids while they go and play golf, or clubs come up with, having a creche at the course that isn't, overly expensive to keep the kids in, and maybe that's when the kids get introduced to the game as well. I think, everyone involved in golf has to come up with creative ways to get younger people, not just women, but younger people in general into the game, and with that make them feel comfortable, make them feel like it is something for their age and not an old person sport, which it really isn't. You play it better when you're younger, and it's easier to play when you're younger as well. But it's changing all those mindsets.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the one thing that we've found along our journey over the last 6 years is that, it's not an old person sport, because the addiction to golf can happen at any age, whether you're 8, 15, 20. It's more after you hit that first shot. Most people are pretty hooked. It's getting through just that initial hurdle, right? And not getting lost to the game either because you felt uncomfortable or intimidated or, I'm not good at this. It's not for me. And I think that feels like it's the real key bit that we need to unlock is how do we get people past that initial learning curve? Then it's nearly 100% success rate of loving the sport. It's really interesting. Like, what are your thoughts on things like Future Golf and Top Golf and X Golf and all the new bits and pieces that are kind of entering the space?
Well, I think that's the survival of golf. I think that's bringing new people to the game. I know with Top Golf that they're even getting to the point now where they want to have a 9-hole golf course attached to their Top Golf facility, because they've got so many people that have enjoyed Top Golf, their Top Golf experience. Now they want to go and play on a real golf course, and I guess they would feel comfortable if it was associated with Top Golf, because it, you can go to Top Golf wearing jeans and a t-shirt. So, those sort of things. I think the initiative you did with getting 20 to 39-year-old women involved in future golf, and the concept of future golf, I think is great. We talked about it last year when we first met. It gets people who don't think that they're ever going to get use out of a membership. It's kind of like when you join a gym. I don't want to pay full membership because I don't think I'm going to go for 12 months, even though it's cheaper to pay for 12 months. I'm just going to pay for 3. So I think it's good to get people's feet wet to see, oh yeah, okay, I'm playing 15 games a year, and the next year I'm playing 30. So I think it's a great way for people to feel connected to other people like them.
I think well, thank you, and that's we agree, and I think it's about bridging that gap, because what we find as well with our members is that once they get into the game and they're reconnected to it, they will join a club, because it becomes a no-brainer to go and start practicing, getting your handicap lower, playing at the same course, and the value of a traditional membership becomes ridiculous at that point. If you're playing more than 20 rounds of golf a year, it's a lot cheaper joining a club than it is to play green fee golf at a variety of different courses. So I think, and that was the same for me getting into the sport. It's really hard to go from starting and not having family members or being connected to the sport, going to a driving range. Then what? Like, where do you then go to get to the next level? And I think that's hopefully, as you hit it on the head there, that's hopefully what things like Top Golf and Future Golf and X Golf and all these things can do, is provide that safer environment to build up in. But that's awesome.
Yeah.
And with Vision 2025, is there particular aspects of that you're really excited about?
Well, I think, like I said, changing the culture a little bit, and the way clubs look at a model of attracting members and particularly girls and women to the game. And I actually think that's the biggest key. That and also, they're working with the PGA of Australia too, and teaching the golf professionals that you can't teach a woman the way you teach a man, and also to change their expectations of, there's just all this different culture around it, where a woman can feel from the teaching pro that he doesn't think she's any good. She already can feel that. And I think it's changing the way that they're taught and the words that they're using to encourage women to stay in it. If they feel like, they're being, not told to their face that they're not good, but if they feel like no one thinks that they're going to be good, or they're just wasting their time, then that's already one step of them feeling uncomfortable. I think it's just changing just that whole scene, and for little girls too. Like, I wasn't a little girl that was afraid to play with the boys, but I've heard from a lot of my friends that teach kids that girls are very, if they're separated, if they're at a junior clinic and they separate the girls, they're boisterous and they're playing, and then they bring them in with the boys. They let the boys speak and take a step back. It's just, I guess it's just a natural instinct. And I wasn't a girl that would have done that. I would have been right in there with the boys and saying that I could hit the shot better than them. But if there are girls that feel that way, it's teaching them differently and making them still feel welcome and still have a good time when they're out at the golf course.
Yeah, I love that. I think you're right. Having more diversity in the offerings is really key, for all the different, I think, groups that probably I'm the traditional golfer, which is at the moment still the older golfer that's been around the sport for maybe 20, 30 years. I think it's such a critical point around making it more comfortable and more targeted and tailored for the individual. Like if I speak to my wife as well, she's like, well, I'm never going to go play 18 holes with you. But if there's bunkers and bubbles and we're playing 3 holes and there's some champagne and some music and it's more of a social experience, then I'm in, but it's not going to be 18 holes with a polo shirt and walking around for 5 hours. She's just not at that point yet. It's got no interest. But the idea of being on a beautiful parcel of land and having a nice social experience, that's completely in the hitting zone. So I think that's where it can get really exciting with some new innovations over the next few years. And it's great to see that even at the top level of the sport, that's the discussion nowadays. It's not about protecting the traditions, which is still really important, but it's also about evolving.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it even goes higher than Golf Australia. The RNA is realizing too that it's really an untouched or, they haven't unearthed that market yet. They haven't paid enough attention to it. And that's where the growth of the sport's going to be.
Yeah, agreed. And now shifting gears a little bit, the way that where we got connected, it's through, I think, one of my favorite people in golf, and you're wearing the polo shirt there. It's through Ross Perrett and through his son, John, who's been a great mate of mine since we started entering the golf space. Tell us a little bit about the design and your relationship with Ross and what you're doing in that space.
Well, I agree with you. Ross is has since the day I met him been one of my favorite people. But I worked with Ross and Peter Thompson. Ross and Peter invited me to be a part of their Rio Olympic bid for the Olympic golf course for the 2016 Olympics in Rio. And I'd had a little bit to do with Peter over the years, and I'd loved Peter, and briefly I'd met Ross, but when they brought me into their office and as a part of their team, right from day one, I felt like I'd been a part of the team for a long time, and there was a lot of mutual respect in the room. And I'd been involved with a little bit of course design throughout my career, and I'd never felt more part of the team and mutual respect as I did working with Peter and Ross. So as the years went on, we stayed in touch. We bid on a few different jobs, and then obviously Peter retired and then passed a couple of years ago. But Ross and I went in. We verbally agreed to put in a bid on Indooroopilly Golf Club when I'd heard that was a possibility, and we beat a long list of other golf course architecture companies to win the job at Indooroopilly. So Ross and I, after many attempts at trying to get a job together, we formed Karrie Webb, and we're actively working on Indooroopilly Golf Club, the 36-hole redesign in Brisbane. And out there we've got a couple of logs in the fire courses in Australia and in Asia, but definitely looking for more work.
That's awesome. Amazing. And what is it that you love about the design space?
Well, I think for me it's obviously it's been playing golf courses and playing so many around the world. It's subconsciously been a part of my life for a very, very long time. And like I said, I have had a chance to do a little bit, even starting way back in the late 90s. But for me, it was, and I probably have learnt the most being around Ross and Peter. But for me, I looked at golf courses so one-dimensionally for a long time, and just how to play it, and rather than what actually went into it. And I think for many years I liked golf courses and I didn't like others, but I don't think I could have explained to you why I did. The golf design aspect and architecture aspect has sort of been evolving for me. And it's been a crash course of learning too with Ross, and obviously I know how to design a hole strategically, but there's more than that goes into it, and I've just loved learning all about it and being a part of a team to come up with concepts.
No, that's amazing. And I love watching that partnership. And as we mentioned earlier, Ross is, like, even for myself, just been such an awesome mentor and person to have around the industry. And I think he's so passionate about the space. And I still remember him saying something when we first played a round of golf. He's like, you can really tell the character of someone when you play a round of golf with them, and it's something that sticks out. And I think it's really reflective in who he partners up with and how he goes about the business. So it's awesome to see that partnership, and wishing you guys all the best for that moving forward as well.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
It's exciting. And a few sort of quickfire questions to wrap up. Your dream 4-ball.
Dream 4-ball. I would say my coach, Calvin Heller, my grandfather, and Mickey Wright. So Mickey Wright, Mickey Wright's the only, well, she passed away earlier this year, but she was the only living LPGA Hall of Famer that I'd not got the chance to meet. So that'd make up my foursome.
That's amazing. And we didn't touch on that much. Like, you were at the time the youngest inductee into the Golf Hall of Fame. I think you were 30 at the time. What's that like when you're still in the middle of the career?
Well, I like it better now. So you have that you have to be. I think it's 40. Well, it is 45 because Tiger's going to be inducted next year. 45, I think, is better than when you qualify. Purely because at 45 you've got so much better perspective than you do when you're in the thick of things. I enjoyed both the World Golf Hall of Fame induction and the LPGA Hall of Fame induction immensely. I really, really enjoyed both occasions, and I think I thought I fully appreciated it. But when you're still in the thick of your career, you're still thinking about next year and how I'm going to get better. And I think you have a better perspective when you're older or out of the game. So you can be retired for 5 years, I guess, too. So you can go in younger than 45, but if you're still competing, it's 45.
Yeah, that's amazing. And is there a player that sticks out from your career that was like the rival, or kind of the best that you ever saw play?
Well, I think rival-wise, I can't go past Annika Sorenstam. I think we definitely brought the best out in each other. We, whether we were playing in the same group or, comparing ourselves to one another over the course of the year, I think, I wanted to be better than her and she wanted to be better than me. And, we played some epic games of golf together. Some of the best rounds of golf I played, she was in the group. So she definitely inspired me to be as good as I became.
That's amazing. And just in finishing up, what's the best piece of advice you could give to someone entering the game of golf or a younger golfer?
I think just to have fun. You're going to be in one of the most beautiful settings, out with nature, on a manicured golf course, and just just take it one step at a time, and make sure you're having fun. If you have fun, you'll love golf. If you go in there with the wrong expectations and trepidation, I think it'll be hard to stay in the game. But enjoy it for the healthy mental, physical activity it is, and go out and enjoy a really nice day out. Amazing. Well,
Karrie, thank you so much for being so generous with your time and with your stories and your knowledge. Just really appreciate it, and we can't wait to share this episode with our community and to to pass on your awesomeness, and what an amazing career. I know you're still playing, and it wouldn't be surprised if you go out and win another major even post this interview. So
oh yeah, I won't turn that down.
No, absolutely.
Especially when I've been in quarantine for, I don't know how long it is now, but there hasn't been many golf clubs swung recently. So
hey, you'll be fresh. You'll be fresh and ready to go on the other side of this. But just wanted to say another massive, massive thank you. And yeah, we can't wait to share this episode with our audience. Wishing you all the best, and hope you're staying safe in Florida.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me on, and just hi to all the Future Golf members, and do whatever you can to invite more people into the game.
Thank you so much. Cheers, Karrie.